Police searching the brush and sand at Gilgo Beach first uncovered the victims back in 2010. 13 years later, a suspect is behind bars, charged with 3 of the killings. And the Suffolk District Attorney is planning to prosecute the case himself.
When I took office in January of 2022, I made Gilgo a priority.
DA Ray Tierney is sitting down with Newsday TV for a one-on-one interview and talking about why it took so long to make an arrest, where the case goes from here, and why he's taking the lead in the courtroom. Welcome to Newsday Studio 2 in Melville, and our conversation with Suffolk District Attorney Ray Tierney. So let's talk a bit about Gilgo, if that's okay with you, right? Gilgo has attracted a lot of attention nationally and internationally from all over the place, right? But you and I both live here along with 2 million or so other Long Islanders. What's the current state of the investigation?
So we've indicted the defendant on 3 of what has traditionally been called the Gilgo 4 murders. We're still working on the 4th murder, which is the murder of Maureen Brainerd Barnes. Those are allegations. He's charged with murder of the 3 other victims. They're allegations. We look forward to proving them in court. And when we came into office in January of 2022, we started the task force. March 14th of 2022, we identified Rex Uriman as a suspect. And basically, we were off and running, proceeding with our investigation. We charged 3 out of the 4, and now that we're at that point, we went overt. We executed a number of search warrants, so we're preparing that case for trial. We're continuing to investigate those murders as well as the murder of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and we've expanded the investigation to the other bodies on Gilgo. So there's a lot of work to be done.
You said that you had thought that there would be something on Maureen Brainerd Barnes soon. Define soon. Well,
I mean, so I think at the time of the press conference, I said that there was that balance when you do an investigation like this between the secrecy of the grand jury investigation and the productivity of that investigation, but then that's counterbalanced against the fear that the investigation is going to get disclosed or considerations of public safety. So, just prior to the defendant's arrest, we felt that the balance had shifted, so we had done that. So once that's concluded, now we go out and we continue the investigation, but there are still some investigative steps that we need to take with regard to that 4th murder.
To Ms. Brainerd Barnes.
Correct.
Well, you have 1 suspect in custody. Is there, based on your investigation thus far, can you tell us, is there another suspected Gilgo killer out there among us here on Long Island?
Well, I'm not going to talk about the other investigations onto Gilgo. I will talk about the Gilgo 4, and I will say that again, these are just allegations, but he is the lone suspect and the lone defendant.
Lone suspect, lone defendant. So you don't think that Long Islanders, we shouldn't be a little concerned? We should be very happy that this is what's happening now.
Well, I mean, Long Islanders should always be concerned about public safety, but I don't think they have to worry about, that particular incident.
All right. You spent weeks scouring the suspect's house, the storage unit. Now you have his truck, that Avalanche. How long is it going to take to go through that? When are you going to see something productive out of there? It's
going to take quite a while because as we were talking, we were looking for trace evidence, biological evidence, hair, blood, fibers, DNA. So all of that evidence has to be taken, cataloged, and then swabbed, and then tested forensically. And it's not like on TV where 15 minutes later you get a result. It's going to take weeks, if not months.
Well, I'm going to ask you as if I watch a lot of TV, which we all do. Is there any indication, or can you tell us if there's any indication from any of this that these women were killed in any of these other places?
Well, I mean, I think really the only evidence you have is those 5 questioned hairs that we talked about, three of which have been forensically tested and mitochondrial DNA profiles have been obtained. Those mitochondrial DNA profiles, two out of two of the hairs consistent with the wife, one with the defendant. So, you know, from there, there's been speculation. It's just that speculation that the murders might have occurred in the house, allegedly. But of course, there's lots of ways that people's hair get on another person, such as transference. So if I live with a person and their hair gets on me, and then I come in contact with a third party, both my fibers, my hair could get, and my spouse's could get on that third person. So,
well, is there any indication that he may have been working with somebody else, or that there is somebody else out there?
No indication of that whatsoever.
Has any of the evidence that you collected thus far put you closer to charging anyone else, looking at anyone else?
You know, we've broadened the investigation. I think we were fortunate, and pretty much as soon as we got on the case, we were productive, and we were working towards the Gilgo 4. Obviously, we wanted to terminate that investigation and start the court case as soon as possible. So that's what we did. But you know, the downside to that is, you know, you can't do a full investigation. So we're doing it sort of in pieces. So that investigation as to the other bodies are continuing. But just like with our initial investigation of the Gilgo 4, we're not going to talk about it until we're ready to charge in court.
All right. Well, Newsday's reported that you are now looking for DNA swabs of this particular suspect. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Do you think that this is going to help you connect him with, say, Brainerd Barnes?
Well, that's a standard practice in cases. It's been reported that we got what is known as abandonment samples. Typically, after you make an arrest on a case, and you have the defendant in custody, you take swabs just to confirm that the abandonment sample DNA profiles are accurate.
So just to clarify, an abandonment sample is something that I take, chew on, whatever, throw out, and you guys collect it.
Yeah, you surveil a subject, obtain either a bottle or an article of food, perhaps, and then test that. But obviously, that's not as definitive as an actual buccal swab from inside a
Right,
cheek.
so pizza crust, that kind of thing. So we are now hearing for the first time in court papers, first time in court papers that is, that a cause of death or presumptive cause of death, which is strangulation. Now, pretty early on in the investigation, you guys were saying the remains were so degraded that they couldn't determine a cause of death. Are you all, is this a cause of death? Is this a cause of death for one, for four?
So the ME's office examined the remains of all four women. You know, given where they were left open to the elements. The amount of time they were out there, they were skeletonized. So the examination determined that the cause of death was homicidal violence, which simply means death caused at the hands of another.
So strangulation?
Well, because there's skeletonized, they can't determine exactly whether exactly the cause of death, other than it was caused at the hands of the other. For instance, if a person is stabbed, you would have damage to the flesh, and you might have damage to the skeletal area if the knife pierced the bones. But if it doesn't pierce the bones, then you wouldn't have that damage. And because there was nothing but skeletal remains, that was the cause of death. That was the only cause of death that could be determined.
Well, so I'm referring to a footnote that we wrote about in Newsday today that mentions strangulation or asphyxiation, I guess that's the formal term. And also we had talked to some of the families who said that their death certificates, that they received death certificates of their loved ones that talked about asphyxiation. So you guys are not going, I mean, it's in a footnote. So is this it or not?
Homicidal violence is, so asphyxia is a subgrouping of homicidal violence, but the official cause of death is homicidal violence.
Okay. Well, if strangulation is a subset of homicidal violence. Let's talk about all these guns. Any indication from your evidence that any of this cache of guns that you found in the open or hidden in the suspect's house has anything to do with these victims?
No evidence, and that would be highly unlikely because a gun, getting shot with a bullet, is a very violent thing, which almost invariably causes damage to your skeletal system. And since there was no overt damage to the skeletal system, it seems highly unlikely.
This case was investigated through 5 Suffolk police commissioners, by my count, 3 Suffolk DAs, you're number 3, and 2 Suffolk County executives. Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison, when he came on before you, he said he was going to make this a priority. Then you come on and you say you're going to do it in a different kind of way. And the breakthrough came after looking at existing evidence, right? Yeah. So I've been asked, could this or should this case have been solved earlier?
Well, as I've been saying, I took office in January of 2022. We formed the task force February 1st of 2022. But I think that, what we did was we were able to bring a lot of really talented investigators from a lot of different law enforcement agencies, bring them into the room with our investigators, meaning the Suffolk County DA's investigators, our analysts, and our prosecutors, and we worked together on a daily basis. And I think that's really what was able to give us the breakthrough, because if you look at all the evidence comes from like different places. The FBI contributed, the state police contributed, of course the Suffolk County PD contributed, as well as our investigators and prosecutors. So it takes that collaboration, and it takes that working together on a daily basis, I think. So that's why we were able to be effective.
But there have been other instances when, in theory at least, Suffolk was working with other agencies, even if it was for a period of time or a short period of time. What made the difference here? It's more than just working together. What was different here?
Well, I think the difference is we had a bunch of really talented prosecutors and investigators actually working together on a daily basis for the first time ever in this investigation.
So the implication is that they weren't working together.
I don't believe that they were working together to the extent we were, and I don't think, I think that there were a lot of starts and stops to the investigation. So what we did is we blocked out the outside distractions and let the investigators and the prosecutors do their job.
Okay, so define an outside distraction for me.
Some force outside the task force that is applying pressure on the investigation. And look, I wasn't there, I can't talk about it, I can only talk about what we did. That's what we did, and it bore fruit. All
right, so take me in there for just a second. First thing you had to do, you got all this evidence. What do you got to do with it?
Well, first thing we did is we digitalized it because we were hopeful that one day we'd be able to develop a suspect and charge him. And then under New York state law, our discovery statute is very broad. So we knew that in short order, all of this 12 or 13 years of investigation, we'd have to provide to the court and to defense counsel. So what we wanted to do is digitalize it. It would also help us in searching it, right? And I think that's the thing. I mean, you have 13 years of investigation. If you don't digitalize it, if you don't so make it searchable, then you have to manually go through literal reams of paperwork. So I think that was helpful. So that's basically what we did, and then everybody had a different sort of responsibility. So you digitized it and you indexed it. Yep. Okay. So what's the next step for the people in the room? So then you go through it, and you develop new leads, and really that's why you need the prosecutors in the room, because in today's digital world, to get information, which is the lifeblood of any investigation, you need your prosecutors there to be issuing subpoenas, search warrants, and the like, to bring new evidence into the investigation. So we're bringing new evidence into the investigation while simultaneously looking at what had happened in the preceding 12 years. So which came first? The old evidence led you to the subpoenas that led you to the new evidence, or the new evidence brought you back? How'd that work? I think you're doing it simultaneously. So different people have different roles, and you're working with. I mean, primarily in the beginning, you're looking at what happened in the past, and then you're establishing the universe of information, and then you're saying what's left, what is there that we still can do. So that's basically what we did.
Well, one aha moment came when someone from the state police took a look and said, "Hey, this might be the guy." Talk to me about how that worked. Where did that come from?
So again, you have hundreds, if not thousands probably, of statements, reports, detailing information concerning all the 4 murders. So you have to sort of look at that and then make a determination what seems likely, what doesn't, what else could we do. So there was a search undertaken with regard to what's been called the first generation Chevy Avalanche that was seen at Amber Costello's house the day before she disappeared on September 1st, 2010. So that search was undertaken. They had a result, and Rex Uriman was one of the individuals who were found to have owned that vehicle at that time. And again, that defendant, he matched the rather unique physical description. And then if you look where he lived, he looked in Massapequa Park within the area of interest established by the FBI back in 2012 through cell site analysis. But not only that, but he also worked in Midtown Manhattan, again, within that area of interest that had been established by the FBI.
So you get a truck, you find out who the owner of the truck is. Then from there, did you go back to the original witness statements? How did you find that witness who had the description?
So we culled through everything, and not only did we cull through everything, but we spoke to whomever we thought was appropriate. I'm not going to talk about it specifically who we spoke to, but we spoke to a lot of people. The interesting thing about our investigation, however, is it was secret. And we felt that was a power that we had, or an asset that we had, because we knew, or at least we strongly suspected, that the individual who committed these murders, he would be surveilling our investigation through the media. So if you go back to when I took office, I did not speak. I spoke about Gilgo only in general terms, because we wanted to have the sentiment out there that, look, this is just business as usual, nothing really is happening. And as we were getting closer and closer, we wanted that thought to be out there that, look, nothing is happening, because we knew that when we moved and we made that arrest, we wanted to issue those search warrants, and we wanted to make sure, we wanted to give ourselves the best chance possible to get additional evidence.
Now, you had this suspect under surveillance and digital surveillance for a while. The search history, why was that important to you all?
So the way we got the search history is, so we went back and we had the 4, like each of the Gilgo 4, a separate burner phone was used to sort of lure the victim out and allow the perpetrator to murder them. What we learned about Uriman is that he had a lot of burner phones attached to himself. He also had a lot of fictitious email addresses. So we sort of went back to, from 2007 to 2010, and then we're looking at the burner phones, and burner phones are just simply a prepaid phone where you don't have any actual or real biographical information, so it's hard to trace. So, but there's always telltale signs. So we would take whether it was an email address or something else, and that would link us to another phone and another phone. So then we're going through all of these burner phones, and we were able to associate 7 separate burner phones with the defendant. And then finally, at the end, we got his actual burner phone that he was using, and that allowed us to get his internet search. And then once we got the internet search, we saw in a 14-month period that he had searched the Gilgo investigation over 200 times, and there were some other concerning activity as well.
the concerning activities. There's a lot. I mean, the bail memo went in chilling detail on what some of those found. Did that part of it sort of help bolster the idea that this was your guy? It wasn't. It was the burner phones. It was the hard evidence, but there was also everything that he was doing, everything that he was looking at. Did that sort of begin to put a profile together for you guys, or more than a profile, or bring a profile to life?
Well, I think you know, starting March 14th, 2022, when he was first identified, and then okay, we start. He owns he owns that avalanche. Okay, look at his physical description. Look where he lives, and then the more we looked, the more compelling the case became. So. So that we just kept on working it, but that's also why we went back and we wanted to get abandonment samples.
Well, this is Long Island, so we may as well be in Long Island for just a second. So we got to talk about politics, right? Who should get credit for all of this, the breakthrough?
It doesn't matter. You know, I leave that to other people. I think the task force should get credit for it, and you know, I think some people like to split hairs. For instance. You know, when I campaigned, I said we were going to do a task force model. Rodney Harrison, the police commissioner, when he came in, I think he came in December, a little bit before me, he talked about a task force. And when he won, when he got appointed, I called him and I talked to him. I had worked with Rodney in the city. We had done a lot of gang cases together. We had success. We knew each other. We were familiar with each other. So it was a sort of easy conversation. And what we said was, you know, let's do this task force. So, and everybody's, well, whose idea was it? I mean, two people could have the same idea.
Well, but I couldn't help but notice, but during the press conference, there were only two elected officials there, you and the sheriff.
Yes.
But at the same time, the county executive, Steve Bologna, had a presser. The governor was on the island. This is a perfect moment for politicians. Any reason why they weren't there? Sure.
They weren't there because this wasn't about politics. This was about a 13-year-old case that Long Islanders really wanted to see solved, and it was solved by the task force. It was solved by members of law enforcement who were part of that task force. So when we had the press conference, it was about the task force and it was about the case.
Okay. Well, let's get into the prosecution a little bit here. What went into your decision to try this case yourself?
So, you know, when I ran for office, I actually had the opportunity to meet some of the victims. And, you know, we had a, you know, private conversation. I told them that I was going to give this case its best opportunity to be solved, that we were going to go through the task force model, that we're going to work with our partners, and you know, whatever we could do to solve the case, we would do, but that they needed to trust me because they weren't going to see me at press conferences, they weren't going to see me talking about the case. We were just going to be working diligently behind the scenes. So, you know, that was our mindset. That was what we had spoken to the victims' families about. And then once the case heated up, you know, we were all working on it. You know, my chief investigator, Rich Zacharis, was working on it. I was working on it. My chief assistant was working on it. We had a team of ADAs working on it. And so I participated in the grand jury. We put the case together, and then, you know, after the case is put together, now I'm one of a handful of people in my office who know the case the best. So I've tried big cases before in my career. So I made the decision that you know, we'll see this through to the end.
Well, you talked about the families. Do you have any concern that your attention on this case, which is going to last a while presumably, is going to have an impact or a potential negative impact on the families of other victims or whose cases are being handled by your office? Because there are a lot of them.
So I'm a working prosecutor. 2 days ago, I was in Southampton. I was in Ridge. I was in Centereach, and I was in Brentwood meeting with families, meeting with the victims and families. So I will devote the time that is needed, not only on the Gilgo case, but on our other cases as well, which I've done since I've taken office. and I'll continue to do that. I typically work long hours. I typically work 6 or 7 days a week. So we're going to continue to do that, and I'm also going to continue to lean on my great team of investigators, analysts, victims advocates, and of course prosecutors.
Mr. Huerman's lawyer, we were all in court the other day, has said very and adamantly that he will not try the case in the media. And he also said that his client has said he did not commit these crimes. And the lawyer went on to say that as far as he was concerned, Mr. Huerman had already been convicted by the media. Are you concerned that your public appearances, including this one, to be honest, could factor into a motion to have the case tried or moved to another jurisdiction?
Well, I strongly suspect there will be such a motion. There usually is. These are allegations, and which we've said all along, and they need to be proven in court. We look forward to doing that. So I think that at the time when that motion comes in, we'll answer it. But this is not the only prominent case on Long Island, as you know. And we tried the MS-13 cases in federal court. I tried the case, the murder of Vanessa Argueta and Diego Torres, the 19-year-old girl and her 2-year-old son. And the thought was, there's no way you can get a jury who doesn't know about this case, and then you get 500 citizens come in, and then you realize you can. So,
and that was the case involving MS-13.
Yes.
The mother and the child who were shot to death or killed,
yes,
out in Suffolk. Let me ask you something. When you go to court, you all made the decision to charge Mr. Huerman with murder 1 and murder 2. You see a lot of murder 1s, or you expect to see murder 1s in the case of law enforcement or firefighters or something like that. Why murder 1 in this one? Talk about the difference between murder 1 and murder 2, and why this case necessitated a murder 1 charge.
Well, as you said, there's a number of reasons why you charge murder 1, but in this instance we charge murder 1 because the number of murders and their proximity to one another, so it meets the statute, and so that's why we charge it. And if you convict someone of murder 1, the sentence could be potentially life without parole.
That's the difference between the murder.
That's the difference between murder 1 and murder 2. Yes.
All right. So life without parole. So you're going to take it upon yourself to go to court to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this suspect is guilty of murder 1, and should you be successful, he would go to prison for life without parole.
So what we're going to do is we're going to, we've charged the crimes that fit the crimes, and we're going to prove them in court, and the judge ultimately sentences the defendant, but our job is to prove the case, and that's what we intend to do.
And with that, thank you so much for coming out to see us, Mr. Ray Tierney, Suffolk County's District Attorney. I'm Joye Brown for Newsday TV.